Hello everyone,
Okay.
this is Vaya Mahesh. So our team DPWD Diksuchi for persons with disability is welcoming you all wholeheartedly to this nationalized webinar on excel in accessibility and make it your profession by Shilpi Kapoor, who is the founder of Breaks. Let me explain the agenda for today's program. Introduction in and technical instruction to all the participants. Second one we have is introduction about the speaker. One of our teammate, Mr. Srinivas Chakravartula Garu, going to introduce the speaker to this session. The third one we have is speaker speech, as we are all waiting for this. Next, fourth one is question answer session. After speaker explanation, we have question answer session. After that, we have a formal conclusion of this session. One of our teammate, Mr. Sai Kumar, is going to conclude the session by giving the vote of thanks. So after all, we have a general discussion. All the participants can interact with the team, DPWD, and can give a suggestion, feedback on all our session. Our team is very happy to know that you people are showing a lot of interest to participate in all our sessions. Thank you all for sharing the information with your known people and circulating all WhatsApp groups. This time we got huge response throughout the country. Thank you all. As for so far as we have conducted many webinars, so far we conducted 13th webinars. This is going to be the 14th one. Thank you all your support, participation, and active participation in all our sessions. Next, we have some instruction to all the participants to run this session in a smooth manner. Raise your hand, first one. If you want to ask any questions, just raise your hand, then only I can allow you to unmute yourself. Second one, please comment your question in Zoom chat box as well as in YouTube comment box. So one of our teammates will pick up the question and read on behalf of you. Third one, I request everyone please join your with your own name so that it will not it will become easy to interact with you. So fifth one, I request everyone please try to be in mute during the session so that you not create any disturbance in the session. So without any delay, now I request Ms. Chinua Chakravartula Garu to give the brief introduction about the speaker. So over to you, Srinivas Garu. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mahesh. Welcome, everyone. Before I introduce Shilpi, I would also introduce the DPWD, Diksuchi for Persons with Disability. Few days back, I was under the impression that it is run by a few people who are working employees and so on. But to my surprise, I just got to know, except 2 or 3 people, this whole thing is run by a bunch of students who are either studying in graduation or pursuing some courses or the other. And Shilpi, another surprise is this is not a very old organization or a team. The whole initiative got started in the month of May this year, that is May 2020. It is started as a WhatsApp group to share knowledge or share communication skills, etc. But eventually it's actually grown and they have conducted about 13 to 14 webinars. This is the 14th one, as Mahesh said. And continuously it is every weekend they are doing one webinar or the other, and interesting topics, and participation is really great. There usually every time I see around 70 to 80 people, and today so nice to see more than 130 people. So firstly, thanks to all of you at DPWD for doing such a wonderful work. And by the way, thanks for having me as a team member, which is another surprise to me today. Now about the speaker, I will just take a few minutes to introduce Shilpi, but I will let her do her formal introduction as well later. If I am right, and I'm pretty sure that I'm right, Shilpi is probably be the first person who actually wrote curriculum for computer training for visually impaired people in India. I know her, Shilpi, from 1999 or 2000, and I was her student. I have learned my computer skills were from Shilpi, directly from her curriculum, and through the teachers that where she was a director for an organization called Indian Association of Visually Handicapped. And later, I was also worked with her at Barrier Break. Shilpi is founder of Barrier Break 247 accessible documents, and also the Newshook. Newshook is a new online news service which actually covers a lot of stories related to people with disabilities, and one of the are actually only the accessible news website. And Shilpi, for last 2 decades, as I know her, she has a lot of passion for accessibility. And in fact, not only she was first to write a curriculum for people with vision impairment, but if I am right again, she is the one who actually brought accessibility, the term accessibility, to India. And she has done a lot of things, both in India and globally, to spread the awareness about accessibility. We owe a lot of things to, a lot of gratitude to Shilpi and her team at Barrier Break. And with this, I will hand over the floor to Shilpi. Welcome, Shilpi.
Thank you, Vasu. Thank you for the introduction, as always. Thank you, DPWD. It is brilliant to hear of an organization which is started by students and is going such a long way, especially in the pandemic. So I must congratulate each of you for this amazing job that you all have done. 146 participants at a session in the first 5-10 minutes is an amazing number. So I think you really need to pat yourselves on the back and say that you'll have done a fabulous job to make this happen. So if it is okay with the participants, I'm going to do the conversation slightly differently today, where I am going to speak for about 20-25 minutes, and then I'm going to open the floor for questions. Because it's quite a long session. Is that okay, Vasu and team, DPWD team? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Fabulous. Yeah. So that's the way that we'll structure it. So I might know some of you might have interacted with either Barrier Break or TechShare India when we used to do it, on Newshook today. So I'm going to ask everybody to raise their hands and answer a question for me. Right. How many of you are people who are looking for a job opportunity at this point of time? If you are, please raise your hands. I think everybody knows the raise of hands button. Okay. Interesting to see that a very large number of you are looking for a job opportunity. The hand raise are increasing. Currently, I think there are about 20 people who are looking for a job. Fabulous, right? So I'm going to try and demystify some of what I've learned over the years and see how I can help some of you to make this happen. So I'm going to go back in history a little, as Vasu said, being someone who, as Vasu literally said, I think I was the first computer trainer in the country for the visually impaired, not only the first person who wrote a manual. Before the NABs and everything, I think IVH was the first center that really opened with a structured course curriculum for people with visual impairment. So I'll tell you why I started. So I was right out of college and got onto the internet. This is 93 to 95, where video was not an option. Even audio was very, very rare. It was largely texting. And I got into a chat room where I learned how to hack, right? So being out of college, it was very interesting to think about, how do people hack? How do you find a hacker? How do you create a problem on the web? And then how do you solve such problems? So after learning how to hack, I was then offered a job inside this chat room by the person who had taught me everything about hacking. So when I joined this company, it was a US-based company. And when I joined them, one of the first things that stood out for me was that here I was working with some amazingly cool people with the most amazing technical knowledge, far better than me, and had amazing speed, because to be somebody who is looking at security of a servers and to stop hackers from hacking your system, you've got to be really, really fast. So I was learning from some of the best at that point of time. So, one day on a shift, nearly 2 years after I started my job, I was on the same shift as my boss, and I caught the hacker and he didn't. And any time before that I'd ever been on a shift with him, it was always he who beat me to the game. So I asked him, I said, what happened? How come I beat you to the game today? So he laughed and he said, I've never told you, but I'm paralyzed neck down. And for me, that was the biggest shock of my life, right? Um, how we live in India, we assume that we don't really interact with people with disabilities on a day-to-day basis. In my school, I do not remember somebody with a disability being there. Or maybe there had been, but I had no clue about it. So for me, what was the real shock was, here was this person who told me that he was paralyzed, and he was not paralyzed to, a small level, but his entire body, other than anything over his neck, was all he could control. And he used to use a sip and puff device, and he used to control his computer with his breath and with moving the mouse pointer with his mouth. For me, that was a revelation. I think it changed a couple of things for me. Firstly, it showed me that people with disabilities could do anything. And the bias was in my head, not in anybody else's. And it actually broke that bias for me literally overnight. From there, the next thing that I realized was that behind the computer screen, anybody can be equal. All of the biases of society, of seeing somebody having this thought process about them, are just not there, because for those 2 years, I thought he was the most amazing hacker, and I yet do. So imagine, it actually broke my entire perception on disability. So he turned around and told me, he said, Shilpi, I know you. Why not technology for people with disabilities? And I know you want to do something different. That's why you were looking at hacking. So from there started my journey. I was happily holidaying in London, and I walked into the Royal National Institute for the Blind, and I basically went and bought every book that they had. I bought every technology piece that I could find, and I came back to India, and I started to teach two blind boys from my house. And that's when a friend of mine challenged me. And I had spent a lot of money, because even at that time, JAWS was $1,000 even then, right? There was really no difference. It was only the dollar rate that changed. So this friend of mine challenged me, and he said, you bought a computer, you bought JAWS, you bought a braille display, you bought a magnification tool, and you teach these two boys for 2 hours in a week. What a waste of money. So I said, what do you want me to do? He says, that computer should be used 8 hours or 10 hours in a day to teach people. And that was the real start of thinking about how could we start a computer training center for the visually impaired. I went to a lot of nonprofits in India, some of the best leading in the visually impaired, and they actually told me, blind people, sorry, it's impossible for them to be able to use computers. They can only be telephone operators or use the typewriter. So it went from there to starting an organization uh, with a couple of other directors, and then very soon realizing I did not want to be a nonprofit. So people like Vasu, Preeti Rohra in my office, who's one of the leading accessibility people in India, they're all out of that computer course. But I remember, even after teaching them all of that technology, job opportunities were few and far between. Vasu, am I right? You, it was impossible even then to get a computer job,
Absolutely.
right? And that got me to the next challenge. And I was like, I am teaching all these amazing people how to use computers, but nobody wants to give them a job. The ask was yet the same. Do you want a telephone booth, or do you want to be a telephone operator? Right. And people like Vasu and Preeti just did not want those kind of jobs. They wanted something better. So I said, I don't believe in the nonprofit model, because I was going around and asking people for funds, for computers, to run a center. And I said, suppose we change the model. And the model then became what today is Barrier Break. So Barrier Break is three basic things. We employ people with disabilities, right? Nearly 65%, 65 to 70% of our team comprises of people with disabilities. We provide technology solutions, helping companies to make their technology accessible so that we can actually further the cause. And thirdly, we are not a charity, but we are a for-profit model, right? And we are a social enterprise. So if you can see, we changed the way disability was going to be addressed, right? We went from there to doing things like TechShare India, and I don't know if some of you have attended it, but it was the first ever assistive technology and accessibility conference in the country. And we ran it from 2008 to 2016, right? Um, and it was just about passion. So, when you think about accessibility, the first perception that most people with disabilities have is it's about their own disability. So if I was to ask each of you, you would say accessibility is about making websites or mobile apps accessible to screen reader users or magnification users because it matters to you, right? But actually accessibility is about all people with diverse needs, and on an entire spectrum where, on the one side you might have somebody who's low vision, but on the other side you might have somebody who is blind. uh, for that entire spectrum, how can we make a solution work? And then it's not only about the visually impaired, but it's about people who have physical challenges, people who are hard of hearing or are deaf, people who have cognitive disabilities. And very often I find that groups of people in the disability sector only really want to talk about accessibility from their own area of focus. And which is why Barrier Break is so different, because Barrier Break talks across disability. We never really speak for one disability type or another. And that's what makes us amazing, because we are looking at true inclusion. And I think I want each and every one of you to realize that accessibility, as much as going to support you, is going to support a larger group of 1 billion people in the world. So it's a very simple anecdote, right? Um, as visually impaired people, I'm sure a lot of you are enjoying audio description in movies. In India, we've been struggling to get audio description at scale. Yes, we have that one-off movie that comes out. It's brilliant. It's great. You have one show that might get aired at some theater because of some nonprofit. But these are all one-time things. But now for a minute, look at something like Netflix and Amazon bringing out audio described movies, right? Now think of the scale. Yes, it might have happened for the US market, and India might have got it as an ancillary to that. But that is called true inclusion, where we take things at scale. We don't talk about 1, 2, 3 people getting impacted. Yes, that's good. But if we really have to make accessibility happen, it has to go way beyond that, right? So, and again, a lot of people don't believe that accessibility is for the larger group, right? And if I walked into, let's say, any education institute, and I was to ask you all the same question, right? When you are typing a message, or how often do you use word prediction? I'm sure very often, right? That word prediction was actually never created, only for the visually impaired. It was actually created for people with learning disabilities. It's benefiting the visually impaired. It's benefiting me, right? Who, quote unquote, is, a sighted mouse user. So just think about it. Accessibility has such a larger use case. We see movies that have captions on them, and those are being used by people in India who don't understand English so well, and for whom English is not the first primary language. So we are building inclusion. Now, from there, if I go on to somebody with a physical disability, take my boss at that time, right? He needed to use a computer with his breath and using a mouse pointer which was being moved around by his head. Now, such an interesting, innovative idea. But now, if that button is so small that he is unable to just place his focus on that, and it does not allow him to activate that button because of that focus area being so small, that could stop him from experiencing a website or a mobile app exactly like you and I would. So the world of disability and accessibility is a lot wider than that. And the first thing that you and I have to do together is to help people realize that disabled people are not that one off group, but they're really truly integrated in society. And they really truly use exactly the same solutions as anybody else. But today, that is yet not an understanding that we have managed over the 20 odd years of disability movement in India, maybe 30 years of disability movement in India. We yet haven't reached that point. We yet have this disconnect of, this is for people with disabilities and this is for everybody else, right? And we need to bridge that gap. And that is what accessibility really does. So I know a lot of you, are very active on different groups, and you all talk about the challenges that you all have, etc. But when you also think about accessibility, right? And if you really want to take accessibility as a career, think about accessibility at large, and think about all the different user groups, just not your own issues or what affects you, because that is how we will truly be able to make accessibility get out of there. So here's a very simple example of something which we don't do right. So a large number of visually impaired people came together and started to voice a problem about using the Indian Railways website, which is a problem. Yes, it is not accessible to people with disabilities. But then when we spoke about it from only the capture that was there as a problem. So when you talk to people about the challenges, if we don't give them a holistic picture of what are the problems that people with disabilities are going to face, then we are only going to get a piecemeal solution to it, right? And the aim of being an accessibility professional or being an accessibility advocate is to really talk holistically so that we can help people understand the changes that are required to be made to make something more usable by people with disabilities. Right? So when I define who all can use a website, and in my world, and the way I've always seen it, it's about I would want everybody to be able to use a website, irrespective of their disability or their, right? So somebody with a visual impairment, somebody with a hearing impairment, somebody with a cognitive challenge, somebody with physical challenges. Within these groups, there would be multiple other user categories. Finally, I would want people who are even elderly, because there is such an overlap of the challenges faced by the elderly with the challenges faced by people with disabilities. And if we include that group, we will have a larger market, and thus we will be able to address, hopefully get companies to want to address the challenges of people with disabilities. And then we have people that sometimes have a temporary or a situational disability. Right? So all of these groups come together to make a sizable opportunity in whereby organizations should focus on accessibility, right? Um, at the larger concept, you hear people talking about accessibility from a perspective which is, yes, it, it makes a lot of technical sense to follow accessibility standards, because there is a standard to which we have to make something accessible. It's not that it's just something in Srinivasu or my mind, but there is a worldwide standard that everybody has to adhere to. And if everybody adheres to that, people with disabilities can enjoy equal participation in the digital space, right? It is obviously socially relevant for organizations to build inclusion and diversity. And that's very, very critical for organizations as we get them into the fold and as we start to get them interested in ensuring that their solutions are accessible. Right. The next is, obviously there is a legal case, and the legal case is one where though India has the RPWD Act, we yet have to see a really good implementation of accessibility, at least in the digital accessibility space. So when we think about it, right, and then we have the most important reason why people adopt accessibility, and that's the business case, right? What is the business case of making your solution accessible? Take Zoom, for example. Today, if I ask most of the visually impaired or people with disabilities in the world, which is your platform of choice for online conferencing, nearly 70 to 75% of them will say it's Zoom, because they have made an effort to ensure it is accessible. It is not perfect. Right? And we have so many people with different disabilities. So remember, for a company, it's about your increase in your revenue. It's about increase in your customer base. And it's about increase in being able to take accessibility to a larger market. So with that, I'm going to take the first opportunity out here to pause, right? And see if anybody has questions before I go more in depth into some of the other things. So if anybody has a question, please either raise your hand or put out a question, please. DPWD, are you managing the questions or should I ask the questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. We will take first question from Sahanta MI. So please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Audible, ma'am?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, this is Jayant.
Hi, Jayant.
First of all, good afternoon, ma'am. I'm looking forward to pursue my my future in this thing only, accessibility. Even I tell you like a short, very short, like I'm already working for like in accessibility only. If you say I'm already working like for my like college, it's in like right now I'm pursuing my bachelor's. I'm in my final year. So I have already done a great level advocacy for my college, a particular thing. So at a like an infrastructural level also, and we are soon planning to do it for the web accessibility thing also. So, ma'am,
Sure.
can you like just advise me like what would be the like best going towards future? So like what thing can I do for the
So
accessibility?
can we talk about that later, Jayant? Right
Sure.
now, is there any basic questions that anybody has about disability and accessibility in general? I'll speak a little more in depth into that because I'm sure everybody will have similar questions. So I will come to that as I talk about how can you make a career out of it, right?
Okay, sure. Thanks, ma'am.
Sure. Anybody else has a question about disability type and why accessibility at this point?
Yeah, next question is from Jayant Singh. So he is not asking. Okay. Ma'am, we will take all the questions last after the completion of
Okay, sure,
explanation. And they will.
sure. We'll do that. Okay. So from there, let's go on to the question of, like Jen spoke about, how do you start building accessibility within your organizations, which might be your schools, your colleges, your employers, etc. Right? But before we get to that, let me talk about each of you as professionals. And let me also tell you today some of the gaps that I see, right? And that will then lead us into what do you do to be advocates and professionals within this space. So today, I see a large number of people with visual impairment and other disabilities.
Shelby, may I interrupt?
Yes, Vasu?
Okay. Could you also touch upon, because today we also always say that students should actually think about their career and pursue what they want to do, and they should start
Yeah.
thinking from their school level, at least from the 10th standard. So if
Yeah.
somebody want to make a dream, make a dream and
I'm
make
coming
a
to that.
career in the, yeah.
I'm coming to that. That's exactly where I'm
Absolutely.
starting from, right? Okay. So the first challenge that we see when we employ people with disabilities, right, and where you have to start from is your basic education, right? A lot of people with disabilities assume that it is okay if they do not know how to spell, if they do not know how to write, clear English. So it really starts, like Vasu was bringing up, at your basic education level, right? It starts from you focusing on being able to do your own work on your own. So some of what I'm going to say right now is going to be political, right? And I'm going to urge you to listen to it with a very, very fresh mind. So when we start college, right, or we start school, right? Very often, as people with disabilities, we are told that here you can use a scribe, here you don't need to read your own textbook, somebody will come and read it out to you. I am going to tell every one of you, the first thing that I need each of you to do is become independent in how you study, right? Which is read your own textbooks. If it is meaning read a Word file or a ebook, find that information and manage to do it on your own. Because one of the first problems that we face as employers is that we do not have the, the skill set available to help us make people productive members of our teams, which every employer is going to look for. So start first with your communication skills, right? Start working on that, your written and your verbal communication skills. You need to start that way before you get to college or way before you get to a job, right? I have met very, very few people who can write an entire page or an entire white paper or an entire blog post totally on their own without making errors, right? Language errors. So I would urge each of you to please focus on that. The next thing that I would love visually impaired people to do, right? And now I'm talking to you all as a group, is know your concepts, right? It is true to any learning and more so for the visually impaired, because I might scan a page and find my answer very fast, but you might have to read an entire page to understand the concept. So if you've learned something, learn it so well that you can speak about it and that you can actually get into a conversation about that, right? I find a large number of people struggling to speak in a conversational method when it comes to technical topics. And I know all of you must have been through a computer training center by now, right? And all of you must have learned computers somewhere or the other. You would find it very funny, but when Barry Brigg gives a test for hiring people, very often, most of the people don't know the concepts of a screen reader. And this is when they have not only done one computer training, but maybe 2 or 3 computer training centers that they would have been through. And you struggle to explain the concept of why is this a radio button and how do you use a radio button and what's the difference between a radio button and a checkbox. These are skills that each of you need to know, right? As a person with visual impairment, your screen reader or your magnifier is your biggest asset. It is your friend. Some of us joke about it in Barrier Break, and we also say, is this your boyfriend or your girlfriend, right? Because you hear it so often. It's like you've got to hear it for 8 hours of a day, right? And you have to make it your companion in that way. It has to be something that really assists you and supports you to do what you do better. So I think it's very, very critical that each of us understand that these are some basic things that you and I are going to need to start to build a foundation in any career, because language and communication is required by everybody, right? Concept understanding in any field, whether you are an HR professional, you are an accounts professional, you are an accessibility professional, you need to know your concepts amazingly well. We have this one person in Barrier Break, Namrata Salyan. I don't know how many of you know her. She is like our encyclopedia of accessibility guidelines. She can rattle an accessibility guideline to you, at any time. You can wake her up in the middle of the night and she can tell you the guideline and the concept. Be that, right? A lot of people say that concept can't be taught to visually impaired. And I say that's so not true, right? Because once you get the concept right, and once you understand that concept really well, whether it's a technical concept or a science concept, if you remember it and you learn it, not just mug it up to go and give an exam, you would be able to take that into different areas of your life. And last, as I said, right, what's really, really critical is that you also start to, do all of this very early in your career and become independent, right? There is a lot of dependence that we see among people with disabilities. And I can tell you, right, that inside Barrier Break, our teams write audit reports in really complex Excel sheets, right? They're done by visually impaired as well as by our functional accessibility testers. There might be something a visually impaired person might not do, which might be that they might not be able to take a screenshot and mark a particular area within that screenshot. But I can tell you, teams where our customers don't need us to mark an area would visually impaired even take a screenshot on their own, right? But it only comes to that marking point where we might say, okay, you need a support of a peer on a project. But otherwise, right, I have never seen a difference between an employee with a disability or without a disability. So if you start with those basic foundations in any career, accessibility or otherwise, each of you needs to ensure that you've got that taken care of before you start looking for a job, right? Now, when it comes to specializations and accessibility being a specialization, right? The first need is to know your screen reader inside out. And I can tell you that averagely when an employee joins Barrier Break, they struggle to hear their screen reader for 6 hours or 8 hours in a day, right? All of us work in the digital world today. And that screen reader is the most important thing in your life. And if you don't make it your friend, and if you don't learn how to manage it and find a hack in it to make it easy for you to do, right? You will struggle in the real world, because there are very few companies like Barrier Break who will actually spend the time and teach it to you. most companies will expect you to join their workforce and be able to start work after a little bit of onboarding training, right? And they might not have the technical knowledge themselves to be able to teach you those in-depth things. So wherever you are studying, ensure that you learn that, not just as somebody who is using a screen reader for 5 minutes, but a lot more in depth. So as an accessibility professional, that is a must. You must know your assistive technology, whatever that technology is, right? Then comes your technical skills, right? There are some accessibility courses which are available, right? So I think VisionAid runs one. I know Youth for Jobs runs one. I know Sarthak runs a course. NAB runs a course. DQ has an online course. So take any of these that you would like to study from, right? But again, learn it thoroughly so that you can then uh, talk about those concepts, right? That is a very, very important part of building a skill set. Now, the problem with accessibility as an area of focus is that in India, we yet don't have a curriculum course where you can go and study accessibility 100%, right? But you can do some very innovative things, right? Uh, you can, maybe join, like there's an organization in UK called Knowability, and they have an AIR program where students, professionals can join and be a part of a team. And they can then, while they are learning accessibility, build a website for a nonprofit, right? So that's a phenomenal way to learn, where you actually get into a project and work with a whole group of other people. And if you are not a full team yourself, Knowability will map you to other teams. Um, so look for opportunities like that, right? The web is filled with a lot of knowledge on accessibility. Okay? Some of you might have heard of IAAP, the International Association for Accessibility Professionals, right? And we're soon going to be starting webinars in the India time zone. This is a professional body where you can go and get yourself certified online. And they have something called a CPAC exam, right, which is more tuned about, it's more tuned towards accessibility and, accessibility from a disability and a legal perspective, etc. And then they have something which is the WAS, which is a web accessibility specialist exam, right? So you can opt to do an exam like that and get certified, right? So there are multiple layers to the path to accessibility. But today, yes, a large amount of accessibility is largely taught within organizations who are hiring people. So for example, within Barrier Break, we have a very strong accessibility training that we conduct and that we continue to conduct on an ongoing basis, because accessibility is so wide and you need to keep your learning up to date. I joke about it and I say that even till today, I'm always learning. Every day I learn something new in accessibility, right? And it is such an amazingly vast topic that gives you the satisfaction of doing a job, but also while doing a job, uh, helping the community at large to become inclusive, right? So those choices are yours to be made, right? Um, so I think it's very, very critical that we look at, because accessibility is so not organized yet in India from a learning curriculum base. Start with some very simple things that you need to learn. Go and learn HTML, right? Uh, you can go to W3 schools and you can go and learn HTML coding out there. Most people say visually impaired, how am I going to code? But I know so many people, and most of my team will learn to code at some stage maybe once they're 3 months into accessibility for visually impaired. But it's something you need to learn to do if you want to become a professional. Go beyond HTML and learn CSS and JavaScript, right? Again, people think we need to go to a course to learn all of this, but you can learn all of this on your own also, right? I am a standing example of learning accessibility totally on my own. Nobody has ever taught it to me. I have learned it on my own. I have learned code on my own. And I can probably do better than most accessibility consultants in the world. So start with teaching yourself these basics, right? And don't get scared of technology. Lots of people, say, oh, there's a new release of Office come out. My Excel is now changed. How am I going to work with it? Right? I can't find this feature that I used to work with. Remember, be a problem solver. Go find the answer, right? Because whether we like it or not, in the world at large, it is required of a person with disability to prove themselves also, right? And I tell my employees, I say, I don't see a difference between somebody who is a functional accessibility tester and an assistive technology tester who's a person with a disability. I don't see the difference between the two. I want each person to do exactly the same kind of work, the same amount of work, and be at par, because you should never have to feel that, oh, I was just employed because of my disability. But you have to feel that I'm employed because of how amazing I am at accessibility, right? So those are things that we have to shift. We have to learn to keep our challenges on one side and find the solutions to overcome those challenges, right? So I'll tell you 3 things that we face when people join Barrier Break. The first thing that we face is that they are not skilled in their assistive technology or in their screen reader, not enough to be able to work with it all the time. The second thing we face is that they haven't gotten used to listening to their assistive technology, right? When your screen reader tells you something, you have to listen, because the biggest asset of an accessibility tester or an accessibility professional is to find the problem, right? And identify that problem and document it. If you're not listening to your screen reader, you won't be able to understand where the problem lies. So I'll give you a very simple example that all of you would have experienced. One of the most simple guidelines that we test for is called heading structure, right? Invariably, when I hire somebody new, I would ask them a question. How well do you surf your favorite websites from India? And invariably, most visually impaired will tell me that one of the favorite websites that they will go to would be some cricketing website, right? Because everybody loves cricket, don't we? So yes, they are on this cricketing website. Now I say, okay, so how many headings did this website have? They would say, I don't remember, right? How many heading ones did it have? I don't remember, because they're not listening. You need to know the data before you can test for it. So an accessibility professional largely does what? There is an international accessibility standard, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guideline as one. An accessibility professional would then go and test a website or a mobile app against that standard. And he or she would then document the bug based on what they find, right? Does it meet the standard? What's the problem? And they need to document it so that the company can solve that problem. Now here, just think for a minute. If you didn't identify that, after an H1, the next heading that came was an H3, and they skipped an H2 in the middle, then you won't be providing full guidance to a person, right? Now that means you need to listen to your screen reader. The screen reader is giving you this information. You need to listen to that, oh, this was a drop-down menu, but it didn't tell me that this was a menu. Right? It is up to you to learn how to use your screen reader effectively. Preeti says this interesting thing within Barrier Break, where she says, my screen reader talks so much, it gives me so much information. I have to understand what of that is critical for me to tell my customer that there is a gap in this website, right? So Jayan said earlier on, he is looking at even going into his college and talking to them about digital accessibility. You just can't go in and talk abstractly. You will have to give them facts. This is where this problem is. So it's about identifying a bug and then writing that bug in a way that anybody can understand the problem that a person with disability is facing and how should they solve that bug. So it's about getting the concept right, knowing how to test for it, writing out the bug in a way that anybody can understand it, identifying where the bug is, what is the bug doing, how do they solve that bug? Because if you don't give them guidance, then there's no point in being a accessibility professional, because you have to also give them advice on how to solve some of these challenges, right? So there is a lot of knowledge that you need, and then you have to transfer that information to a customer where your language skills will come in handy. So Vasu, does that answer the basics for you?
Yes, it did. It did.
Okay, fabulous. Okay.
I have
So-
also told them that I was thrown out of accessibility testing at one point.
Oh, yes, he was. And basically, I can also tell you that if he comes back into Barrier Break, the standard is so high that I don't think Vasu hears a screen reader as much as my team does, even today.
Very true.
Right? So people think accessibility is easy. It is. It's easy if you know your foundation, right? If you know your basics, if you know the why, what, how. It's difficult when you look at it as a checklist and you say, okay, I'm only going to be checking for this. Okay, I'm only going to be checking for this. So I'm going to ask everybody a raise of hands question, right? When you find a job, maybe you already have one, how many of you would want to be treated equally like your able-bodied counterparts, right? How many of you would like to be treated equally? Let's see what the answer comes. Okay, about 10 people till now. Okay, fabulous. And the hand raise is increasing. I am so impressed to know all of you for saying that. But even then, it's not everybody, right? So we have about 15, 20 people who've raised their hands for that answer. I can only tell you one simple thing, right? If you are in an organization because of your skill, because of your knowledge, because they value you, that is the best kind of job that you've got. Because then there is that value of hiring you rather than saying this is just a person with a disability, thus I have hired this person, right? So I'll say this again. I have never ever found a person with disability who cannot do the same thing as their other counterparts. But that is now in your hand to prove that you can do that, right? So I am going to stop talking about that and now start talking a little about some of the places that I would go if I was studying accessibility. Uh, Currently, W3C has um, a course on edX, right, on accessibility, and I think it's free yet. So I would urge each of you
Yes, it
to
is free.
go. Yeah, so I think I would urge each of you to go and look and go through that course, right? So it is on edX. Maybe post this call, I can send some of the links to the organizers, and you know, then they can work on how do they share that with you. Then there is another amazing organization called Teach Access, right? Uh, and Teach Access also has a course that you can attend. So I would really recommend that you can go to Teach Access and see how you can get supported by that. There is a great resource on WebAIM's website, right? Another site that I think every one of you must be a part of, so that you can get into a conversation on accessibility, right? Last but not the least, I would say that uh, attend the webinars by organizations like, you know, Barrier Break, by IAAP, by DQ, by TPG, and go through some of their webinars that they host so that you can also learn from it better, right? So to get a better foundation so that you can then look at accessibility as a career, right? Okay. So let's move from there to accessibility professional and what does it take, right? So for me personally, what it takes is somebody who has an urge to learn technology and who is willing to not say, no, I've never done it, but is willing to deep dive and learn technology to their best, right? A lot of people inside Barrier Break never knew HTML before they joined Barrier Break, but they learned it inside Barrier Break. And they were always willing to say yes. They never said, no, we can't do this, Shilpi. So firstly, be a technology geek, right? Go out and learn. I can give you an example of Vasu, right? Where he literally started, started a WordPress site for himself, and he learned WordPress on his own. Am I right, Vasu?
Yep.
Yeah. So see that you do that, right? You don't need rocket science today to learn tech. There is so much of technology knowledge out there that you can surely go and learn that. So that's the first thing that you're going to need. The second thing that you're going to need.
Can I have you pause a
Yeah.
minute?
Yeah, sure.
I'll actually tell you how I learned my HTML.
Okay.
And this is a surprise to you, Shilpi. I
Mhm.
learned by reading the code of a website which is then Barrier Break, which is then NetSystems Informatica. I learned HTML by reading the code of that website.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's one of the best ways to learn a website, right? Is to read the code of it. And the code is actually very simple. It's actually English at the end of the day. So start from being a technical person. Listening will be your critical point, because if you don't listen to your screen reader, you won't be able to identify problems. When you think about technology, don't only think about your screen reader, but think about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all these additional tools, whether it's Google Sheets, that you're going to need to learn. People don't realize the importance of these tools, and you're going to need to realize that. And then, have the willingness to go above and beyond and learn, right? So actually, there's somebody who's joined my team very recently on this call. I don't know if he's yet there. Veluri, are you on the call? I don't know if he's yet there. Looks like he's not. Okay. So
Actually,
he is.
madam, we have unmuted everyone.
Okay.
So
Can you
we
just
have
ask
muted
can you just
everyone, so they
can you
cannot
just
respond.
unmute Veluri? Is it possible?
Yeah, I'll do that. He's raised his hand.
Yes. So this is
Yeah, done, ma'am.
Venkatesh Veluri.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Veluri. So do you want to get into a
Venkatesh
discussion with me?
Veluri, unmute yourself.
Yes.
Yeah,
Venkatesh,
Venkatesh.
have you been able to?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, Venkatesh, please go ahead and interact with the ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Venkatesh, let me ask you, when you joined Barrier Break, what was your technology knowledge?
It's a so-so, ma'am. After joining Barrier Break, I learned so many things. It's very, I'd like to say this, regarding HTML, before I was not knowing HTML coding and all. After joining, when I take training from Amit, he has given very nice knowledge on HTML, and I started to learn.
So let me
Yeah.
ask you, before Barrier Break, how many courses on technology had you done and from where?
Yeah, I have done 3 courses from Enable India one, and one is from DRF. One is my own.
Okay. So you've done 3 courses, right?
Yes.
Yes. Now, in the case of Microsoft Excel, you'd learned it in all these 3 places?
Yes, ma'am. I've learned.
Okay. Okay. Now, when you joined Barrier Break, how much more knowledge did you need to be able to use Excel effectively?
Sorry,
on a
can
scale
you
of 1
repeat
to on a scale of 1 to 10, were you geared to learn to use Excel when you joined Barrier Break, or did you have to relearn how to use Excel effectively with the detail that we have of the complex Excel sheets?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I have to learn. I will give you the 8 for the, 8, ma'am, in the scale.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, in accessibility, your first few days, right? How difficult was it for you to find a bug or to find an issue?
Before, I'm not knowing this bugs and all. It is very difficult to me, ma'am, to find the bugs by using assistive technology. It's so difficult to me, ma'am. And after joining, I felt that it's very easy to find the bugs using assistive technology when we listen the screen reader very effectively.
Right. So the most important thing is to,
Yes,
have the knowledge, but listen to your screen reader, right? That's a very
yes,
important thing.
yes.
Okay. Now, if I was to ask you, now, how many months have you been in Barrier Break?
Recently, I was joined. It's 1 month, 10 days.
Exactly. From the time that you joined Barrier Break till now, how many hours of training must you have been through?
Approximately, I have been 20 to 25 hours
of training, right?
Yeah.
And and today, do you think that on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how much more has your HTML and accessibility knowledge increased from when you started?
Yeah, it is increased. I'll give you the 8, man.
Give it 8. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So if you see, Venkatesh did not know HTML. He did not know, you know, as complex things, and he didn't even listen to his screen reader as well as he now needs to. This is something that you get when you get on the job, right? I can tell you, and I'm sure Vasu also has a similar, level at which he listens to his screen reader. When most people start working, they start listening to their screen reader at a very lower rate. And then by the time they become experts, the speed at which they're listening to their screen reader is so high that I don't think I would ever be able to figure out what the screen reader is saying, but they can.
Some of our colleagues say that your computer is singing and not reading.
Exactly, right? So you have to realize that you have to embrace your screen reader. I have found people who, when they join, get headaches with listening to their screen readers, right? And give up. They're brilliant at their work, but they can't overcome that they have to use the screen reader for so many hours. So I would really urge each and every one of you to ensure that you get prepared for your work life, right? It's not going to be very easy. It's not going to be very difficult, but it is going to take an effort on your part to be able to deliver the solution that your employer is going to want, right? It might also take additional training on your part. So be ready to embrace that, right? For all of you, once we start the accessibility professionals, the IAAP webinars, we will let DPWD know. And I'm sure all of you can also join those because those would be free. And that would help everybody to be able to, learn more, hopefully, from others in this space.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am. Thank you for your offer.
For sure. That would be great. Okay, so I am now going to open the floor because I think I've been speaking for too long continuously. And then once I hear people's questions, I'm going to then add on a little bit to that. So, and I think a lot of people said, please unmute me, and also whoever would like to.
So before taking a Q&A session on a Zoom, so I would request you everyone to give their questions on a chart so that we can minimize the time. Otherwise, it goes very long if you ask in a question.
Very
we
true.
have a sighted assistants who will gonna read the messages out, and madam will assist you through. So I believe there are few NGOs have attended this webinar, and I believe they include accessibility features in their projects and programs.
Right.
So I'd like to take questions from hand raised people.
Sure.
Yeah, Raju Chandradeep, please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Raju,
Yes,
please go ahead.
Hi, ma'am. Nice to see you here. So, yeah, ma'am. So my question is like, okay, I was also I can say that I'm also taking the course, from Vision Aid organization. I'm getting trained now as an accessibility tester. Okay, so my question, and I was also gone through an interview of Barrier Breaks 1 week back. Yeah. So, okay, the thing is, my question is like, okay, when we are listening to the screen reader, okay, as you said, on the part of listening skills only, I got deselected actually. So how do we like concentrate on this thing? Like, okay, when we get headache or when we, something is happening, like how do we concentrate on the bug testing, and how do we improve the bugs to be tested and all. So what are the process? What is the process exactly to listen to the screen
So
reader and to find the bugs and all in accessibility testing? Because that would be the
so
most important thing, right?
the most important thing is to listen, right?
Yeah.
And then listen for the gaps, right?
Yeah.
So when you test, right, what, let's say a screen reader tells you a lot of information. So let's say you are on a radio button, right?
Yeah.
And it tells you whether it's checked or not checked,
Yeah.
right? Or selected or not selected
Yeah.
based on the screen reader you are using. It
Yeah.
tells you the option. It tells you
Yeah.
the number of options in the radio button grouping,
Exactly.
right? Now,
Yeah.
suppose a developer coded each and every radio button as a separate element and not grouped it, right?
Yeah.
You have to listen for that, right? So if
Okay.
you don't listen, you won't identify the gap, right? So the first thing you have to do is learn to listen, right? And learn to listen and observe the differences that you are hearing, right? And like you said, one of the first things Barrier Break looks for is people who are listening to their screen reader and not ignoring it, right? So what most people say, oh, we know what this is. But when you are testing, every site is different. Every site has been written in a different way. The code is written separately and differently because every developer codes in their own, with their own thought process in their own mind, right? Now,
Yes.
if you assume that, oh, I know that this is the mistake on this site, then you won't be testing, then you'll be making assumptions. Whereas what you have to do is you have to ensure that you learn, right, to listen so that you can identify those gaps without making the assumptions that, oh, this is there on that site, right? So, is there a website you go to very often?
Yes, ma'am. There are a lot of websites like
Right.
yes.
So very often you will notice that the website has changed a little and some new feature got added or something you were using very often is no longer there, right?
Yes.
How do you
Yes.
identify that gap? That gap you need to identify because that's a similar gap that you have to find out where the problems are, right? So
Yes.
it is so my first thing to you would be listen to your screen reader, listen to every
Okay.
word that it says. Every word has a meaning to a tester. You might
Yeah.
just say it says four options, right? But you have to remember it's four options. And then if by chance there is a fifth option that's come up and is blank, you need to identify that there was a blank option, right? That
Exactly.
listening skill is very, very critical. The only person who can help you with listening is you yourself. So my recommendation to you would be concentrate when you listen to your screen reader. Don't do it
Thank
like you are multitasking with doing three other things at the same time, right?
you.
So
Okay, ma'am.
concentrate, listen carefully, and then recap in your head, this is what it said,
Yes.
right? Because a lot of us ignore that recall value because you have to make out those distinct differences, right?
Yeah.
And at least for a company like Barrier Break, it's very important that every team of us always has a screen reader user on it. So
Yes.
it's very critical that you listen. So I would say start from there. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And in the future,
Anytime,
yes, I try to improve it
Yeah,
and I'll definitely come to.
I'm sure. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you, Raj, and
Next.
thank you, ma'am. We have next Kiran. Kiran. So, hi, Kiran. Please go ahead with your questions.
Hi, Shilpi, this is Kiran.
Hello.
Hi,
Actually,
Kiran.
I got to know about a Barrier Break and about you as a week before one of your recent employees, and I just read through about it. And it's nice to hear about your like what exactly you guys are doing and how you are helping PWD. Actually, from your experience, I just have few questions. Currently, what I feel is like there are few people very much interested to give the job opportunities for visually challenged, but only barrier for them is awareness. Awareness means like how the visually challenged students operate computer, or what are their abilities, whether they can do the programming or not. It is like $1 million questions for them. Are you guys trying to do anything about from your company side to give awareness to the like your partner companies or any other company?
We're not a non-profit. That's not our job. That's your job. Sorry. But we are okay with to share with people what we do. But honestly, the awareness of that is not our part of work. It's for the non-profits to build that. From a barrier break perspective, we do allow corporates to come to our organization and go through a walkthrough of other people using systems and go through an accessibility lab approach. So they can come in. 1 second, Vasu, let me finish, please.
Yes.
Yeah. So what we do is we open our doors for people to come and help them understand. And they might not be that they're coming to work with us. They might just come to observe our people so that they can learn from that, right? So that's the one thing we can extend, Kiran. But I think, that is really where the nonprofits will have to make a dent in communicating how people can, work effectively, and maybe even create case studies about, the amazing work that a person can do, even if they're using a screen reader. But sadly, that's not an area that Barrier Break would focus on. But let me go 2 steps ahead of that. For NewsHook, it is an opportunity area where we are creating awareness and being the voice of people with disabilities. So we would actually be happy to work with you for NewsHook and see how we can share the stories about different types of people and how they are performing their job, what kind of tools they use. So for NewsHook, that's an opportunity. For Barrier Break, it's about people coming for an AT lab walkthrough and then meeting amazing disabled people to realize that gap. But it's not something that we address with the corporates ourselves.
You have to understand. Actually, the thing is like, the entire world goes by success, people, right? If you are already success in that, if you tell, the impact is different. If the person who is working as a non-profit who don't run this kind of accessibility testing teams and something, they say that the impact is different. In that angle, I just wanted to. Yes,
So if your people are with us, Kiran, have we hired anybody from your organization?
Actually, I run a non-profit for visually challenged students since 15 years.
Yes. Yeah. So what's the name of the organization?
I&I Sharing Vision.
Okay. And has Barrier Break employed anybody through your organization who's come in as a reference?
It's not recently. Sham has been placed 10 days before.
Oh, Sham has been. Perfect. So what we can do is once Sham does, a couple of months, we can probably do a joint case study. That will help your organization also.
Yeah, right? Like I work for a software company, and recently 2 of my students are joined as a program developer, Java program developer in the same company.
Fabulous. That's amazing. That's brilliant.
He's part of one of the hosts here. They only told me about this, and then I'm just trying to understand more about from you.
Sure. Yeah, Vasu.
All right, I wanted to add something. So, Kiran, like both of you have said, it's more job of non-profit disability organizations, whether it is a social enterprise or non NGOs or anything, but disability organization who has to play a lot of role to raise this awareness. Today, we do have at least hundreds or thousands of disability organizations in this country, but we can actually count on numbers who actually does this kind of job. And unfortunately, as Shilpi initially said, some of the disability organizations who actually surprise when they see people with disabilities use their technology, they themselves surprised. That is where the change needs to come. So I would actually see we need to raise the awareness. Unfortunately, though, among the disability organizations and people with disabilities, first, still that gap is there. And people like all of us and DPWT and all of us actually play a role and to change that scenario.
Thanks.
Yes. Actually, DPWT has started with the intention of creating the awareness and creating Filling a gap between corporates and visually impaired or other disabilities. And we are trying
Maybe
to sensitize the both two sides, not only for the corporates,
right,
but the
but the
disabilities too.
non-profit. Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In the interesting of time, I have another question. Shall I ask? Otherwise, we'll give opportunity to others.
You can, please.
Okay, thank you. So she'll be like, I always prefer integrated education. I don't want it's my personal thought process, right? I don't want a separate college or separate institution for the disability, because integrated education will give them mingleness and they understand the reality. That is the biggest more to get the awareness to the normal people, sighted people, right? So so we try to encourage a lot of people to go with the integrated education into professional colleges and everything. So from the barrier break, one thing I'm not I don't know, that's the reason just I'm asking the question. You guys goes for the campus recruitment especially for disabled, or like what is the approach?
We actually hire from anybody, right? A large number of our hiring actually is referral.
Okay.
Right. So we put out a post and people like Vasu and others will tell the world that there is, Barrier Breaks looking for a job, has a job opportunity, and people will apply. We also work through some nonprofits, right? We go through some colleges. So we go to Xavier's, we go to Wilson, we go to Ruia in Bombay, because we are largely a Bombay-based organization. So we would go to mainstream colleges and hire from there also. So it is, across the board, but a large number of people come to us through references, right? Because even for us, it helps us hire better when we know that, they've already spoken to our employees, because, I must tell you, people who join Barrier Break really work hard, unlike other organizations. We really work hard, and our people are amazing at having ownership. Right. So we need people who are willing to work hard. We are not an organization that, it's a government job and you work for 2 hours, and because you have a disability, you can now go home, or you cannot work right now. We're not like that. You can ask all of our guys, they will tell you, we have the same policies for able-bodied as well as disabled people, right? We have no differentiation at all amongst our employees.
The reason
Hey, Kiran.
Yes,
Kiran, thanks for joining. And Shilpi, by the way, Kiran is an amazing person, and I know him for some time indirectly. It is the first time I'm seeing him though, but he actually encourages a lot of people with disabilities to join the science and commerce kind of things. And he's supporting, he actually tried himself to people in Hyderabad. He actually does a lot of work silently.
That's really nice to hear, Kiran.
The reason I'm asking this, the reason for asking the campus recruitment, right? I've been approached many colleges, even like countless, right? Everybody is, some people are interested to say, because now the college reputation depending on the campus recruitment, right? They say that if it's a disabled person, campus recruitment, 99.999% they don't hire. That is the reason colleges are hesitate to take the disabled people. That's where I'm just trying to understand.
That's very sad if that's true. I have never ever done that, so I have no clue, but that's very sad if that's true. Right.
I'm just going by reality. Sorry to say that.
Sure. No, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to ask me the questions. Okay. Need to learn.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, Kiran, who's our mentor and guide, we are all students of I&I, and Mr. Kiran, we are glad that he is on board today, and thank you, Anna. So we'll take other questions from friends. So there are many questions, guys. Please keep your questions very crisp. Ronald, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, but unmute yourself and talk.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shilpi, hi, Ronald here from Delhi.
Hi, Ronald.
Actually, I have 4 years of working experience in accessibility domain. And according to my understanding, what the best thing can be done, accessibility is one thing. Yes, many companies does it only to compliance it so that they are safe from lawsuit and all. But better than this, usability will give you enhanced experience. And like on Access India, when you see many mails coming that Swiggy is not accessible, Zoom is not, Zoom app is not accessible, Zomato is not accessible. So these things we need to streamline it, because they will do testing on one build. The next time when another update is released, so that build is impacted. So until and unless we don't have a proper strict and mandatory guideline in India like we have in America, ADA is a body where looks after all these things. Until we don't have such things in India, I don't think so. Just by raising our voices one by one or coming in a group, it will help out. Because as a community, if we see, it is not only impacting an individual, it is impacting the whole community. So just by saying that, uh, let's fight for Swiggy, let's fight for Paytm and get this thing accessible. Until and unless we don't have our own people sitting there and doing testing on this, I don't think so it makes any sense.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't think there was a question to that, so I will leave that.
Yeah, it is just as a kind of a suggestion, and
Sure.
that's what I meant to say.
Sure. So let's go to the next question then.
Yeah. So we have a Dr. BSM Kumar. Yeah, BSM Kumar sir, unmute yourself and talk.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, very much, Dr.
Doctor?
Kumar.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Hi, Shilpi. Hi, how are you?
Hi, very well.
We have been virtually connected through this and all those things. And I had an association with Barrier Break almost 6 years back on something. So basically, I am a PhD from IIT Madras and MSc MTech from IIT Delhi, and I'm a late blind person and been a professor in chemistry and chemical engineering. And now currently I'm associated with a startup company, Control Engine, as a content and product development advisor. So what I feel is you have been working very well on web accessibility and all those things, but what sort of work has still been working on STEM accessibility of STEM subjects and other things in India and abroad?
So firstly, when you look at STEM, right, the biggest thing that you really need is two things. One is the adoption of MathML as a standard, right? So that we can then use STEM more effectively. So I think W3C already has a MathML standard, which is very, very strong. All of us are using it worldwide to promote STEM. So it starts from the textbooks being, accessible. Then it comes down to students. And I think the bigger challenge in India is very often STEM education. A lot of students with visual impairment use the route of not studying their science, studies, and take the option of taking an opt-out of that because of their disability. I think that is something which is really, really sad, because I don't see a problem with people studying STEM. So I think in 2016 at TechShare, we had launched an entire accessible science lab, right? And we had made everything accessible. The problem that we see with STEM, and actually it's with most of accessibility, is that we need, universities and colleges to take that on, right? And to imbibe that and start to use that and allow students to continue with STEM rather than ask them to drop out of those topics, right? So I think there's a huge problem that is there. Again, something that we have to tackle maybe at the policy stage, then, with the educational curriculum itself, that to see how that would be accessible. And then the interest of the disabled themselves to want to be a part of that, area of focus, right? So I think it's a multifold, approach that we have to take to solve that problem. From a barrier break perspective, we have been creating STEM education for our customers in an accessible format worldwide for the last 10 years, actually. The problem is the implementation of that within India.
Oh, okay. So because see, physical science, there are students who are with science, and particularly there are people like me, and there are so many people who had vision, and at the end of the day, in middle of the career, they had to drop out, and they are forced to quit and take up the other jobs. So what do you feel for those sort of people who have want to relaunch their career on that?
So see, sadly, I don't own an organization that works in science myself, right? My work is accessibility. So I wouldn't have an answer to that. But I would go to science organizations where those kind of jobs are there and show them how this is possible. So I, like, very similar to you, I have an employee in my organization, Mahesh, who's actually done his science, and then lost his sight later. He gets so happy whenever we work with some publishers and we make, science online learning accessible. And he's always so thrilled to be on those courses because he says, it's my background, right? So I understand. But the challenge is, to find organizations that will continue to hire. And, sadly, that's not my forte. My forte is really to make things accessible rather than
No, I'm just looking. No, I'm just looking. Are you trying to working towards making that science materials also accessible apart from web?
We're already doing that. We're already doing
that's
that.
right. Okay,
So we're already doing that. But in our model, obviously, we work for customers and we do it for them. But yes, we're already doing that for a large number of publishers and education institutes. Actually, a large number of universities abroad, we're making science content accessible.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Pratham, please unmute yourself and ask the questions. Pratham Kumar Singh.
Hello? Am I audible?
Yeah, Pratham,
yes,
please.
very much.
Okay,
Yes, please.
ma'am, first of all, I want to ask, are you able to understand Hindi?
Yes, very much.
Okay, मैम जैसे मैं ये क्वेश्चन था कि जैसे कई वेबसाइट्स होती हैं, हमें उनके डेवलपर को इन्फॉर्म करना होता है कि आपकी वेबसाइट्स या एप्लीकेशंस एक्सेसिबल नहीं, हम उन्हें बता भी देते हैं, पर वो हमें जब वो स्पेसिफिकली पूछने लगते हैं हम बोलते हैं अनलेबल्ड बटन्स हैं, पर वो हमसे जब और डिटेल पूछते हैं तो उनको कैसे ये चीज बताएं कि आपकी वेबसाइट्स जो है एक्सेसिबल, उनको डिटेल में या डेप्थ में इसको कैसे एक्सप्लेन करें एक्सेसिबिलिटी इश्यूज को डेवलपर को?
तो एक तो आप ये कर सकते हैं कि आप पहले या तो खुद एक्सेसिबिलिटी सीख लीजिए, एक तो वो ऑप्शन हो सकता है, क्योंकि फिर आप उनको एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं। तो ये जो मैंने आपको थोड़े बहुत कोर्सेज बोले थे, आप वो कर सकते हैं। एक तो वो है। Second is that you can tie up with some accessibility company who can help you give that advice, right? So you can then tie up with some organization who has that knowledge and can take their help to understand more and then give it to that organization. So I'll give you an example. So there is an organization called Javed Abidi Foundation.
Ma'am, sorry, can you repeat?
So there is an organization called Javed Abidi Foundation. And currently, whenever they are sending out information, they generally reach out to us and say, can you help us to write the technical language to ensure that a website is accessible? So if you like, you can reach out to Srinivasu, you can reach out to other organizations or Barrier Break and ask for our help to give you that guidance.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
And ma'am,
Also,
yes. Like, how can I connect with you and your company Barrier Break? Actually,
so,
I'm first hearing about Barrier Break and about you also.
Okay. So Barrier Break, you can go to barrierbreak.com. If you want to apply for a job, you can look at hr@barrierbreak.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Shilpi_Kapoor. I am very active on that. So happy to reach out with any of those ways. And if you need to reach out to me, Kapoor on Twitter. Yeah, okay. So that's the best way to really reach out to me because I respond fast on Twitter.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Kumar. So we have Gabriel. Gabriel, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello.
Yes.
Good afternoon,
Yeah,
ma'am.
Gabriel, please.
Good afternoon,
I
Gabriel.
I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Gabriel, and I recently joined Berebrick. It's only about 5 days, and I have a question. Like, while I was browsing in the internet, and I saw these headings. They are not serially marked. Let's say, example, if it's H1, then the next heading they will come NH3. So how do we put this an issue?
Gabriel, you should talk to Amit about that, because I don't think the group here wants to learn all of this right now. But Amit is your point of contact or your team lead.
Yeah, Gabriel, actually it's a subject better, you can interact offline with the experts. That would help you, I believe.
Yeah, actually, this was the question, but then I thought I should not ask, but then since I get an opportunity, so I just asked.
No problem, Gabriel. I'm sure we'll catch up anyway next week.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We are scheduled to meet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Cynthia Singh, please unmute yourself and ask a question. Cynthia.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, you
please.
called me. Yeah. Okay. Hello, ma'am. So this is Cynthia here, and
Cynthia.
yeah. So before asking my question, I must admit that after listening to you, my decision to pursue a career in accessibility is more resolute, more firm now. So
that's great.
yeah. So currently, I'm pursuing this course on accessibility with Vision Aid and DQ University.
Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a problem like whether to build a career in accessibility or not, because I am pursuing my master's in English from JNU. So it's like for a student of literature, entering into an industrial setup is an altogether different thing, a different environment. So what do you suggest me? Like, what are the qualities which you expect me to have if I am really passionate in building a career in this field?
So I can tell you, Cynthia, that 90% of the people inside Barrier Break with a visual impairment would not have a technical background when they joined. Okay, they would come from English, social sciences, and history and law and everything else, but technology, right? So one, I can tell you that it's possible if you so desire, right? But obviously this is a very personal question and it's a very personal decision. It's also about what are the opportunities out there, right? So I know I've heard a lot of my employees tell me that we've been through so many interviews, but nobody would hire us. And Barrier Break did. So, and then we've now fallen in love with accessibility. So we've taken it forward. But obviously that is a very personal choice, right? And it's also about finding an opportunity if you really want to look for a career, right? I know a lot of people who want to take government jobs, and that's their
Yeah,
choice,
that's the time.
right? So I think for everybody, it's about a choice of where do you see yourself going. Like if you ask me, for me, accessibility is my, it's my passion, right? I can't even think about doing anything else other than that, which is why I have 3 companies focused on that. So that's a choice that each of us makes. And I would really tell you to introspect and think about what it is that you want to do with your life. What does Cynthia want to be known as 10 years down, right? Like, I want to be known as the person who does accessibility at scale and has a global impact, right? And has proved that accessibility can be done with employing so many people with disabilities. So that's what I want people to know of me as, right? So what does Cynthia want is the question I would ask. And if, if English is really your calling, then to go all out and find a way to make that happen. And then decide, if you're looking for a backup plan, or if you think that no, accessibility is exciting, then to jump in and, don't worry about not knowing the technical aspects of it, but be ready to learn. That's
No,
the only way
actually,
I'd
ma'am,
look at
I had a technical background. It's like I read multimedia web technology in my higher education. But it's
Sure.
just that due to lack of opportunities, I had to take English as my subject. Like there was no one to guide me when I, started pursuing my graduation. So I had to, compromise sort of. And then when I got this opportunity from VisionNet, so I thought, why not give it a try?
Then go for it. Then go for technical, because at least I believe the opportunity and accessibility over the next couple of years is only going to spiral and increase. And it'll be, you'll be ready for it when those opportunities come.
Yeah, but I just wanted to know, like, it's quite different in pursuing a career in English, and then it's like entering an industrial setup. You need different qualities altogether. So that's why I
think
just
it's different.
wanted.
I've done my graduation in sociology. I'm a techie, right? I don't think it's not always true that our education is what finally is the career that we take. So I don't think you should limit yourself. Just think about what it is that you would like to be, instead of thinking of what you were compromised to do. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So we will take a last question from a Zoom Q&A, and I would request everyone to send their messages or requests on a chat box so that we can pick out and we'll read it
And if you
out for
put your
you.
questions on the chat box, I will make the effort to write your answers out if
Yeah, I will
there are
pick
no
for
more
them
questions being
because
taken.
since it's taking a voice, it's going very long. So we cannot
Yes.
cover it in a 10 minutes. So better I request everyone to, give their questions on a chart. And Trinath, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, hey Shilpi, this is Srinath. It's so glad to hear your speech. It's so inspiring.
Thank
So,
you, Trinath. Nice meeting you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, and same here. So, since actually it's not related to the technical thing, but it's something just I wanted to know. Like, since I see, I read about your company, and 70% of your employees are visually impaired, and I think 30% of the people are sighted, if I'm not wrong. So, how do you inculcate both of them in a same on the same page? And the second thing, how does your work environment look like? Because most of the times they have to be sitting on the computer and just hearing and document the steps. But in terms of other jobs, like being a recruiter, I have to make calls, I have to run between the business partners and candidates. So how to maintain the stress levels? How does your work environment look like? These two questions I actually have out of my
Firstly, my
curiosity.
answer to you is I don't have 65-70% visually impaired people. I have 65-70% people with disabilities, which is across all disabilities. So that's the first clarity. Right?
Yeah.
We don't believe in only hiring one disability group. We are inclusive. We are 220 people today. And we have people from all cross sections of life, from autism down to, every kind of disability. So that's the first clarity. The second is, I don't think there is a difference in our organization with any other organization. So the question you asked is, how does our organization look differently? Or how does it look? Like any other, if you have, people who are men, women, elder, younger, somebody from one background to another, our organization looks exactly the same, right? Again, I don't believe that stress is different for a person with disability than for anybody else. I believe it's the same stresses. So, everybody has to learn to balance between what their primary work is, what their secondary work might be, right? So for primary, for me, for an accessibility tester would obviously be testing, but secondary might be that, they have to be a part of the training team and help teach other people or be on client calls. And I think that is just part of everyday,
Even the
working
entertainment part.
environments. Yeah, even the entertainment. So
Yeah.
I can give you an example that, Barrier Break has this Friday activity every 2 or 3 Fridays. We do one evening of Friday activity. And the team that is a part of making the Friday activities happen are people from all teams, and there are people from different disabilities in that group, right? And that is really what inclusion is about. It's not about how do I make it different for somebody else or for a particular group. Yes, when you come into Barrier Break, you will find tactile, tiles. You will find braille labels. You will find that our emergency alarm systems also have lighting for the deaf people to know that there's an emergency. So you will find that you will find a ramp, and a chairlift for people with wheelchairs. But beyond that, if you ask me, is there a difference in the work day or the work life of a person? I don't believe there is need to be, because I think a person can do everything, right? So that is the way I would answer that question. I have never really believed in an equal opportunity policy. I believe that all policies should be equal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
I think disability is talked to more to the customers or anybody than talking among the employees or something, right?
True. And
Yes.
it's I don't think I've ever really asked my employees beyond the first day that, how, what is about their disability. And that also, I don't think we really go on and on about it. Like Vasu said, generally it's more a pitching point for a customer that we employ people with disabilities and we have a people first approach, right? Because very few companies do that worldwide. But beyond that, I don't think there's a difference, honestly.
Yeah, seriously, Shilpi, that's really great answer, and thank you so much. It's so really inspiring.
Yeah, thank you, Trina. Madam, we'll take questions from a chat box. First, we'll go from YouTube questions. Yeah,
sure.
Karthik, please could you read out the YouTube questions and followed by Zoom questions? And I request everyone to keep their questions on a chat box. Sorry, we cannot accommodate you in a few in a Q&A.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Karthik.
First, we go through some of the YouTube questions. So, one of our friends, Sopan Roth, he is asking how the process of the accessibility box report. What are the steps?
What is the process of the accessibility bug report and what are the steps?
Yeah.
Is that what he asked? Okay. So basically, you need to know web content accessibility guideline and you need to have studied that. Based on that, you would use different types of tools, like you might use assistive technology, or you might use some automated testing tools to test, or you might look at the code itself to find the gaps. And then you would create a bug report based on those findings. So in a very small snapshot, that is what you would do. In depth, there is a lot more within that you have to learn, but I don't think we can take care of that right now, Sopan. But I would recommend you go to W3C and look at the web content accessibility guideline. There is also a tutorial out there. That's a great place to start.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And hand raised people, please I request you to put your questions on the chat. Sorry, I cannot, unmute you to raise your questions because we don't have time. So yeah, Karthik, go with the next
Yeah,
question.
yeah, ma'am. Next question is which certification program we can select, W3C or DQ University? Which course makes easy?
They all have different purposes. So the W3C course is one which is an introductory course. It's a great place to start. DQ has a more technical course, so it depends on what you want. That choice is yours. And then if you're looking for a certification, I would recommend the IAAP certification. And IAAP does have, a book of knowledge where it outlines what all you have to know before you should give the exam. So I would go for that approach in the case of certification, because then it would be internationally recognized.
And I would probably urge you not to think from the easy perspective if you want to become an accessibility professional.
Yeah, madam.
Yes, that's a good statement, I would say.
Okay, the next question.
Ma'am, next question is I want to improve my content writing. I'm in actually technical content writing. Which platform on available this learning material? Where can we learn this concept?
So I think it's about content writing. I would really say go and look for some courses on edX or Coursera and learn from there. But I don't have a special input on which is the specific course the person should go to.
Thank you, ma'am. And next question is from one of our friend Ashok Kumar, and he's asking that what would be your advice to our organization if we want to strengthen our training to persons with vision impairment? What should we include in our curriculum?
So firstly, I think, Ashok, we need to increase more of them using the screen reader in everyday circumstances. Not just that, oh, you've learned Word and Excel in a classroom, but how do you actually create a letter? How do you actually create an entire balance sheet or a sales report using Excel so that people learn how to use it? That's the first fundamental gap. If we are looking at accessibility then forward, then it's about teaching them accessibility. I think there is a need for them to have more coursework so that they learn to use the things rather than just have theoretical knowledge. I think there is more concentration towards theory and very simple coursework, whereas we need to up the ante on that and give them more complex things to do so that in the real world, they can actually, gel in rather than having to be retaught everything before they can start working. So I would take those approaches and maybe, work with other visually impaired people who are already in the workforce and ask them what are the things that they do, what are the things they create, and create a kind of a simulation to help the visually impaired learn that, and then incorporate that in those courses is what I would have done if I was running a nonprofit.
Yeah, ma'am. Next question is from one of our friend Bhava, and his question is how to know the job offerings provided by Barrier Break and how to apply for the same.
So Barrier Break generally puts our job offerings on our Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we have a Naukri page through which you can apply. Last but not the least, you can also write to hr@barrierbreak.com and submit your resume. And those are the ways to get in touch with us.
Ma'am, next question is from Venkatesh, and what is the first step to clear IAAP? Can we get material?
So the first step to clear IAAP is learning accessibility and being good at it, because the exam is reasonably, you have to have experience to be able to especially give the web accessibility specialist exam. So firstly is to have knowledge. Secondly, refer to what I said is the book of knowledge. So if you go to the IAAP website and they have all of these certifications, look for the CPAC or the WAS. The CPAC exam is a lot easier because it's about disability and laws and things like that, which is a lot more easier to clear. But if you're looking for the web accessibility, then go and look for the book for knowledge for both of them actually, and then study those topics one by one. But I would say ensure you get work experience before you do the WAS, because I know of people who have not cleared the exam because they didn't have enough knowledge and experience in that space. So think of it from that perspective.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question is from our our friend Bhava. And his question is, what are different organizations providing job opportunities for the VI persons in areas similar to accessibility testing? Is there any common exam in area of accessibility testing?
So I think a large number of organizations in India are also hiring, but I would recommend you go and look at job portals for that. There is no common exam as such on accessibility. So, all of us do our own interviews and have our own questions that we ask. But generally, you will find employers asking you questions which will help them judge your accessibility knowledge. Or like in the case of Barrier Break, when we hire just freshers, then we know that they don't have an accessibility experience, and we just want them to learn to know the screen reader and have an effective communication skill set in place so that we can then employ them.
Thank you, ma'am. And our last question is from our friend Surendra. And his question is, how to contact app developer to make app accessible? It happened with only Indian apps like Proposo. I always sending mails to them, but I didn't got any reply.
So Surendra, sadly, that is a problem we are all facing. You are only doing it now. I've been doing it for the last 20 years, where I've been writing to websites and mobile app providers and saying your website is inaccessible. All of you kids are now doing it. Sadly, the buy-in is very, very low, but that doesn't mean we stop writing to them, because hopefully one day they will realize the value and will start to do something. Or like somebody said earlier on, we might have a legal case that might require them to do it, or make it more, help them see that they have to be compliant, which today they don't realize the value of. But I think we have no option but to continue to reach out to these developers and let them know that their apps are not accessible in a structured manner. And so continue to be that voice, I would say. Don't give up on that, so that you can then ensure that people know that there is a problem. But I can understand the frustration because I have felt it for the last 20 years. But I yet haven't given up. I yet reach out and try, but yes, it's tough. So don't give up, continue to be that voice, and let's hope that they will change.
We have completed our questions, ma'am. Thank you for your answers.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karthik. And
okay.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Actually, madam, we have questions like many people are raising their hands. For them, we are giving here, we are leaving our WhatsApp number and our mail ID so that they can raise their question into those contact details where we can try to resolve their grievances. And guys, don't worry, you can put your questions on our mail and WhatsApp numbers. So we'll try to answer your all the queries, and it's almost very late. So we are blessed that madam having one of our inspirational person on board and giving knowledge on accessibility behalf of DPWD. Really, we are very thankful to you and Vasu Anna. And now I turn out my microphone to the Mr. Venkatesh, who will gonna give a oath of thanks on behalf of DPWD.
Venkatesh, before you go to, I would actually also express my thanks to Shilpi, because Not just that she has spent a lot of time. And if we know, probably it is very hard to find time of a CEO of a company, several companies to come and spend, and that too on a topic that is very down to earth and helpful to community to grow. Of course, she is not new to doing all of these things, but I really express our thanks to Shilpi for doing that. And I also acknowledge my sincere gratitude to Shilpi's parents, without whom probably we don't really see Shilpi today with these kind of things. So encouragement also came a lot from her parents. So my sincere gratitude to them as well. So Shilpi, if you are at home, say our namaskar to auntie as well.
I will do that. Thank you,
Oh,
Basi.
we are blessed having Shilpi ma'am on board. Really, it's a great moment having you on board.
Anytime, and let me know how I can help DPWD at any point. Okay.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much. And now I turn out my microphone to Mr. Venkatesh to give a vote of thanks.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, Venkatesh.
Yeah. Once again, I take this privilege to thank the dignitaries and all the eminent personalities on the floor. And my special gratitudes and thanks goes to Madam Shilpi Kapoor for accepting our invitation and attending for our webinar. Even though, many corporate people looks for the different types of stages of the invitations, but nevertheless, we are the beginners, but Madam has always been good to us and accepted our invitation. So we have been very much privileged, ma'am, to be you here on this occasion, and people will be blessed with your visit and have got some knowledge about their career. And next to that, I would like to thank Srinivas Chekwarvarthala, sir. Thank you for being with us at all the times and helping us out in bringing such people and introducing them to us and to the society especially. So we hope that our service will be a greater one, and especially the greater people to the society. And next, I would like to thank especially the visitors and the viewers in YouTube and as well as on the platform Zoom for accepting our invitation and as well as showing your interest. Other than that, putting your precious time for this session. I would like to also thank the team DPWD, the entire team who has been working for a long time to make this event a successful one. And overall, my special thanks goes to Bookshare members, because we had some technical issues with the platform where we cannot accommodate people more than 100, but persons from Bookshare has come forward to help us out. So we also thank them. And last but not the least, I would like to overall thanks everyone for being a part of our webinar and making it successful. And my special thanks to Madam Shilpi Kapoor. And on the end, I would like to tell you, you can be connected to DPWD through our Facebook, Twitter as dpwd.org, and you also can mail us at connect@dpwd.org, connect.dpwd.org. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, DPWD, for
Yeah,
organizing
thank
this.
you.
It is amazing to see the energy that you all have brought in such a short time of being an organization. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we thank each and every participant, viewers who had followed us on all the social media platforms. And I especially thank to my friends who had come forward to read out the chat messages, Karthik and Ritik. So I thank them for coming out.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So now I am opening floor for a bye, ma'am. Thank you so much. And now I open up floor for some time to interact, people to interact with the DPWD team.
Yeah, now it's the time for the people can interact with DPWD.